Hello everyone, and welcome to the official Dark Skies Disappearing workshop. I've condensed this 2-hour-long workshop session into 30 short minutes to help you understand what light pollution is and how it affects wildlife. This video is not sponsored by any company or organization, but will feature a variety of different experts and their take on the topic. All resources will be provided in the description below so you can do this with your own students. Without further ado, let's get into this workshop. If you would like to do this workshop for your own purposes, here is the materials list here. Feel free to pause if you need to. Now that we have that out of the way, if you are unfamiliar with who I am, I will introduce myself a little to kick this off. So, hi, I'm Abby, a Nation's Capital Girl Scout of 8 years. This project is a part of my Girl Scout Gold Award project, which I have been working on for the past year. This workshop is to educate students about light pollution and how it affects our daily lives. Before I go any further, I would like to preface this by saying that my mission for my project is not to tell you another reason why the world is in a terrible state. It is about ways to stop and prevent pollution from happening and the reason behind it. This is because I believe that we shouldn't just educate the public about what's happening, but to give realistic solutions to our problem. Light is a form of energy. From the dawn of humanity, people have been drawn to light because it is essential for our survival. All creatures rely on light in some way, shape, or form. We either classify these creatures as diurnal or nocturnal. Light is so important to us that we have even found ways to harness it, such as solar panels. Now we have reached this question, the checkpoint if you will, to help engage your audience so they do not fall asleep or lose focus. So since we talked about that light is a form of energy that can be used in all sorts of things, what produces it? Well, that actually just boils down to two things: heat and electricity. To delve even deeper as to why this is, we will take a look at this model here. On the atomic level, light is produced by tiny particles called photons. Photons are inside of electrons. Photons are tiny light particles that produce light when released from the electron. Photons are released when the electrons move to a higher level. So far, you've heard me mention light pollution and alluded to some of the issues it causes. But what is light pollution? Well, according to Ann Uyeda, light pollution is the disturbance of natural dark skies due to artificial lighting. Light pollution is not as simple as accidentally leaving a flashlight on in your backyard. In order for light pollution to happen, there must be excessive or bright artificial lighting. For example, a common pollutant would be an LED light. If you have ever driven at night while passing by a car with LEDs, you know how much glare it produces. This can not only be dangerous for drivers, but to nocturnal wildlife animals that might cross the road occasionally. And the reason why it can be dangerous for nocturnal animals especially is because the light from the busy roads or large cities can disturb their sleep cycles, causing the animals to sleep in later. And for anyone who has an early morning commute, that could be a potential hindrance. Another example of potential effects light pollution may cause is overpopulation of certain pests. Bats are great at keeping populations of bugs and pests under control. However, due to light pollution, they may sleep in longer into the night and may not have as much time to catch all the night crawlers in your garden. But we still live in a society where we too suffer from excessive light pollution, and it is damaging our sleep cycles. Our eyes are sensitive to blue light, and this is because the color blue has shorter light wavelengths, which means our eyes can easily pick it up just like that. So the more blue light in our eyes are exposed to, the more it is damaging our health and risk of insomnia. Now, this can mainly come from your phone or house lights, but there could be a multitude of factors to this. In order for our society and ecosystem to thrive, we must take action, and it is up to you to make that choice. So now you have a basic understanding of what light pollution is. I will use this video example to show you what light pollution looks like in action with one of the world's brightest flashlights. See how bright the flashlight lights up the sky? Even though the skies were cloudy in that video, you could tell the difference of how dark they were before and after. Imagine if that was your house or city. I'll show you Cherry Springs Park night sky compared to New York City's night sky. The difference is astonishing.
Now you may be wondering why seeing the stars is important in today's society. Well, in order to understand that, we will need to take a trip down history lane. I'll be using this helpful tool to get you familiar with our night sky. For those of you who are curious as to how to use this tool for your own purposes, in order to make the constellations appear, you will need to click on the triangle on the bottom left. Then click on the name of the constellation you want. The constellations are not only vital for astronomers to research, but for navigation. As far back as the ancient Greeks and Phoenicians, sailors commonly used stars and constellations to navigate the seas, such as Orion, one of the brightest constellations. I tell a lot of students that most of the constellations are named after warriors, mythical beasts, and even Greek gods, and let them create their own constellations as a fun activity. As society advanced, there would be technologies developed like a sextant to better navigate, but they would still rely on the stars. Now we have mapped out so much of our world that we don't have to rely on the stars as much with modern GPS. How does that relate to your life? Well, currently most of everybody relies on GPS to get to a new restaurant or visit Great Aunt Peggy in Pennsylvania. Every time you use GPS, you are relying on a satellite in space to calculate the precise location you are at and the relative distance to where you are going. That takes a lot of math and dozens of programmers, mathematicians, and astronomers who are smart enough to know how to calibrate the satellite and signals for fast-acting, reliable GPS.
Start our next activity with the light puzzle. I will link a full tutorial video in the description below for any educator to use. For now, I will read out the instruction. Mirrors will be placed at each table or with each person. The first table at the front has the flashlight. The goal is to get the beam from the first table to the back of the room and reflect the light onto the ceiling. Each table may move their mirror however they like. However, they cannot take the mirror off the table or go over to another table to help them. You will have 5 minutes to complete this challenge. Moving on from that, we will now talk about the effects of light pollution and how it affects our daily lives. Animals are crucial to our ecosystem and way of life. Nocturnal animals especially help keep populations at an equilibrium and pests out of your garden. For example, deer are especially good at eating bugs and ticks that would otherwise spread dangerous diseases. And luckily, because deer are generally more active at dawn and dusk, means that they act as a natural pesticide before you even wake up. Speaking of that, let's talk about why sleep is so important. Sleep is vital for life, and without it, we would not be able to function in our everyday life. Fortunately, due to light pollution, some nocturnal animals can mistake lights coming from cities, houses, to still be daytime. This issue will disrupt their circadian rhythm and cause potential dangers to people. So let's circle back to that example I used about how deer are more active at dawn and dusk. If they were to sleep in at dawn, they would actually miss that window where pests are most active, and that would cause a potential danger to you.
Okay, what is your experience in road safety laws?
So as a police officer, I started the academy in 2005. I went through the Middletown Academy here locally. Once I got out of the academy, I was essentially just a regular patrol officer for about 15 years until I became an SRO. So I do have a vast knowledge of road safety laws, to include everything from speeding, reckless driving, to anything on private property, all those types of things. So I would say 15 years of experience in road safety laws. But even today as an SRO, I still go out and do the same things. If I see somebody, not driving properly or maybe driving a little bit recklessly, I still pull them over and speak with them or issue them tickets.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
Why is it important that drivers know what times deer are most active?
So it's very important to know those things because deer, they have certain types of seasons where they get a little bit more active than others. So knowing that between dusk and dawn is a more likelihood that you may encounter a deer on the roadway as you're driving.
Yeah. Why is it especially dangerous at dawn and dusk to drive during deer mating season?
Because there's a lot of research done that deer migrate during those times, the dawn to dusk, and then during the deer mating season. So that would obviously put drivers at more risk when the deer are, on the move, so to speak. the deer mating season typically lasts from October to December, and there's some research out there that shows that there's about 1.5 million annual deer crashes every year in the United States.
Wow, that is a crazy number.
Yes.
How can society prevent car accidents with deer?
So not only with deer, but just in general, preventing any type of car accidents, the biggest thing is speed. Drivers need to slow down. In our area, I know our traffic division writes a lot of tickets related to speed. So when you combine all that stuff together with the dawn to dusk, the deer mating season, just speed is the biggest thing. Just slow down, be prepared as you're a driver or even your passenger. Just scan back and forth on the roadway, looking for those other sets of eyes that might pop out in front of you. There's some things with your vehicle that you can do. You want to make sure that your vehicle's brakes are functioning properly. Even as little as just keeping a clean windshield to be able to see those reflections at night from the eyes that might be on the side of the road. Obviously, there's things, maybe just know the area that you're in when you're driving. If you don't know the area, a lot of times all states will put up signs of deer crossing areas where they know that that's a heavily populated deer area, and that will absolutely help you prevent getting into a car crash with a deer.
Yeah, awesome. I think it's so important that, especially in Virginia with that large deer population, that people know about. What is Blue Ridge Wildlife Center?
So we are a full-service nonprofit wildlife hospital, which means that we take in all native wildlife to Virginia, anything from white-footed mice to bald eagles to, American robins to foxes. And the purpose is to take in any injured, ill, or orphaned wildlife with the purpose of getting them back released into the wild. We also do education programs so that we can educate the community on how to prevent these issues to begin with. So we have about 18 or so non-releasable ambassador animals that we use in educational programming to talk to people and give them sort of an ambassador for their wild species, as well as research, which we use to further the knowledge of information on wildlife and how to better treat them, how to better track them, how to better hopefully manage them or protect them through like laws and things like that.
A lot of animals are affected by light pollution. Which animals are most affected by light pollution?
So from what I understand, I know birds are affected a lot by light pollution, mostly because there are a lot of birds that are migratory and they rely on the stars and the moon because they fly at night, they migrate at night mostly to navigate where they're going, right? So birds have this innate sense to migrate south. So they use the stars, they use the moon to sort of navigate where they are, how far they're going. And as the stars are moving and the moon is moving in the sky, that's kind of directing them where they're going. In areas, so like really populated cities or just areas that have a lot of light pollution, those birds can then lose sight of the stars and moon, which can then affect, which direction they're going. They might get distracted and think that the light coming from below them instead of above them, might go towards the light. And in big cases, serious cases, like in really big cities like Chicago and New York City, they can actually get trapped in these light traps where they fly down into the city. There's all this light happening. And now not only is there light, but there's light being reflected off of buildings and windows. And they get very disoriented because what they're seeing, they don't understand that it's glass. They don't understand it's a building. They just see light and trees and tree branches and sky, and they try to fly towards it, and they hit those windows. And that can really, obviously, if it kills them, they're no longer migrating, or it can injure them, and put them at worse risk to predation. If you look at a Wild Bird Fund in New York City as a rehab there, they take thousands of migratory songbirds every fall and spring just from window strikes. So obviously songbirds and other birds are affected by light pollution. You also have issues. I know like sea turtles can be affected by light. So a lot of researchers, if they're going out to like check nests or check on adults, they'll use red light, because the red light they don't really associate with like actual light. They don't see it as well. Use cooler light like blue light, that can actually distract them, and instead of hatching turtles or adult turtles going towards the moon and towards the sea, they might go in the opposite direction and go inland, which they're not supposed to do, right? So that messes all of that up. There's also issues with bats. Bats can be triggered by light pollution or the lack of light thereof. It's time to come out, it's time to start feeding and foraging. A lot of bats are very active at dusk. So as it's starting to get darker, if all of a sudden you have lights that automatically turn on, that could actually keep them inside their roosts for longer. Problems where most bugs are really active right at dusk and dawn. So if they're waiting longer until after dusk, until it's really dark to come out, they're missing a lot of food opportunities. So that could impact, can they feed their babies? Can they feed themselves? It can prevent them from leaving the roost at all, or disturb roosts where, it might be wintertime where there's lights and now the bats are waking up and it's too cold. They can't forage. They have to find somewhere else. So that can have a lot of impact on bats, which are really important to the environment. And then obviously lights can affect like insect populations, which is then in turn going to affect all of those other animals that are not eating them, right? It's distracting the bugs. They're kind of in this sort of overstimulated state where they're not foraging as well. They might not survive after spending all that time circling the lights. You see all those moths flocking like that they're not spending foraging or breeding or doing the things that they should be. And so now all of their predators over that, if the insect populations aren't doing well, then everything that eats those bugs aren't going to do well either. There's a lot of things that we see as normal, as like, street lights and stuff like that, but is actually having some pretty serious impacts on the native world around us.
Wow, I did not know a lot of that. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I knew like birds and sea turtles were most affected because they rely on light for their migration patterns and, traveling to the sea where they belong. But I did not know bats and insects were affected.
Yeah. I was doing a little bit of research before, and I found out that even mountain lions, where there are areas where it's really brightly lit, come out and cross in those really well lit areas because number one, it puts them at risk, but also they're used to like staying hidden while they're hunting. They're staying hidden from us because it's more safe for them. Not only do you have like roadways and highways that are these like barriers for them to move around, but even just areas that are really well and brightly lit, they're also not able to cross those unless they're like absolutely desperate. So yeah, I learned a few things in looking this up and just kind of making sure I had all my information, but I was like, oh my gosh, I would have never thought.
Yeah. I know at certain times of the year, it is especially important to time when you release birds. Why is it so important to people to be wary of the times when birds migrate?
Yeah. So obviously with migration and understanding when that's happening in spring and fall, it can kind of make people more aware that if they find a bird on the ground outside of a building or outside of a glass window, absolutely needs help. Sometimes it can get confusing because people think the size of the bird determines their age. So they might find a very small, like golden crowned kinglet, 8 grams or so, and they're like they think it's a baby bird, and they're like, oh well, baby birds, they can't fly sometimes when they're out of the nest, so I should leave it alone, which in some cases is great. But kinglet, that's as big as they get. That's an adult bird. So understanding kind of when you should be seeing baby birds and when you shouldn't. In our area, we're only seeing golden crown kinglets in the wintertime and in fall migration. So if you find a golden crown kinglet and it's not flying, it is not a baby bird. But also knowing too is obviously a lot of people like to put like bird feeders and stuff out. Think that during migration or in the summer that we need to feed birds, or even over the winter, people will be like, they need food because there's no food out here. In our area now, we hardly ever get snow, which is very sad. But there's lots of food resources available. Bird feeders, you do not need to feed birds. It is entirely for us, not for the birds. And they can actually spread more disease between birds because it's congregating all those birds together in an unnatural way. Knowing when birds are here too, especially is important for us because say we get a lot of common whippoorwills or nighthawks in fall migration and spring. We generally aren't going to have them here all winter. So if we get one who hits a window or is struck by a car in September, October, now we have to think about how long is this going to take this bird to recover from? Can we get them out in time to make migration, right? Because they're eating insects and things like that, and there's no bugs here in the winter. It's going to be a 2-month long recovery for this bird. Now we have to think, okay, we're going to have to hold this bird all winter long, because if we try to release them, they're not going to survive. They're not going to have enough food to fuel getting all the way south where they need to go. So there's a lot of migratory birds that we do see that we have to keep that in mind. Chimney swifts are a big one. Most of our chimney swifts in this area are gone and migrated out by like late September. And the fun thing about chimney swifts is you can't just release them and hope they know where they're going. They have to be released with a flock because the adults will come get them. They all get together and they show the babies where they're going. So if you just release chimney swifts without a flock, they'll go south, but they won't know where all of the roosts are so that they can stop and rest on their way south. So they'll basically just be kind of sitting ducks as they fly south. They're not going to have anywhere to stop. They're going to be vulnerable. They're probably going to get eaten by something, or they're just going to run out of energy and not make it all the way. So for chimney swifts, that's a really big one specific to that species. But overall, just knowing and understanding that like you have these large groups of birds moving during spring and summer, or spring and fall. So if you find a bird that is just like sitting in the middle of an urban area as well, we get a lot of woodcocks that hit windows and people will just take pictures and be like, this silly looking bird is in downtown Leesburg or like downtown Alexandria. And they're like, how silly is that? And it's like, that's not silly. That is a concussed bird that needs help. Like, yeah, in the middle of an urban area. So kind of letting people know like when that's happening, they can sort of be on the lookout for like weird, birds that you're like, this is a weird behavior. Like, should they be here? We should probably call and find out because it's probably a no, they should not be there. And they likely need some sort of medical attention or professional help before just leaving them out or trying to release them.
Before I list off all the ways you could prevent light pollution, we need to first understand what we're trying to prevent. So as mentioned before, light pollution is the excessive use of artificial light. The goal of preventing excessive use of something is to minimize it, whether it be removing entirely or restricting usage. Although we can't entirely remove streetlights due to many safety hazards, what we can do is have covers to minimize the amount of light being shined upward. When I interviewed Ann Uyeda, she mentioned to minimize usage, cities and homeowners could install timers. Not only would this save money on electric bills, but it would also improve sky visibility. And for all those astronomers out there, this would be a great opportunity to look up. And for those who are concerned for their health and sleep, you could purchase blue light glasses or install a nighttime mode where your screen would emit less blue light. To end on a light note, let's talk about some places which have implemented rules and regulations to prevent light pollution. The Dark Sky Organization has partnered with many national parks and recreational sites to improve wildlife health and create great stargazing. Thanks to park rangers, rules are strictly followed to help people and animals alike. An example of one of the parks which has been certified by Dark Sky for a few years is Sky Meadows. Sky Meadows has strict policies about curfew and how much light can be at one campsite for the safety of the animals and yourself, and these efforts have made it one of the best parks to visit and stargaze.
So now we will use this website to solidify how serious this issue is and how birds travel such long distance for migration periods. If you would like to know how to use this tool, there should be a guide of how to use this tool as soon as you open the website. I encourage you to explore those options, but I will be using the species migration map for this demonstration. I want to refer back to what I said earlier about how we use the stars to navigate all around the world. Now look at the prairie warblers and how they move throughout the year. It seems as though they know the right time to migrate and where to go. Well, actually, birds often use the sun, moon, and stars to navigate from Florida all the way to Maine. Incredible. As described in the video by Ms. Anderson, a lot of times during these migratory periods, birds will often get lost or have accidents along the way due to lights from cities and houses. But there is hope. Many states will have designated wildlife care centers in place to help injured animals. If you ever see an animal behaving abnormally, please do not hesitate to call your local wildlife care center. Now, I want to hear your thoughts on light pollution. Comment down below if you would, given the chance, put shade covers on your streets lights to reduce light pollution in your city. And if you haven't already, hit that like button and subscribe for more content. The last activity I will be going over is bingo. Since I cannot physically do a bingo session, we will play a matching game. Please pause the screen if you would like to try to match these names to their respective bird. That is all I have for the workshop today. If you watched all the way to the end, you are an absolute superstar. If you have any questions about light pollution or how to use a specific tool, please leave your comments down below. Thank you all for watching.